Thanks to everyone for being here. We will have a presentation for you coming up, and we will be leaving time for a Q&A at a few points throughout, so we encourage participation. Warmly welcome you to the second module of the benchmarking for carbon conscious purchasing. The goal of this course is to help organizations like yourselves benchmark procurement processes to determine what's working, what's not working, how to achieve your sustainability goals through purchasing. It might seem obvious that an organization should be tracking procurement given the vast amount of resources it involves, but the reality is that many organizations experience a gap between creating sustainable policies and tracking the impact of products and services that you acquire to reach your energy efficiency goals. And that's where we would like to help. So this presentation is the next installment in our Benchmarking 101 series that was previously posted on empowerprocurement.com, our website. During this module today, we'll be building off of content from the 101 series to help lay the groundwork for understanding the importance of benchmarking and ensure that benchmarking can help you to ensure your desired purchasing outcomes. So I'd like to introduce myself, Renee LaFrenz with Energy Solutions, my co-presenter, Smitha.
I'm Smitha Paribanda. I'm also from Energy Solutions.
So let's dive in and get started. On the next slide, we will run through our agenda. First, we'll give a brief introduction to Empower Procurement, how we can support your organization through our different procurement initiatives. Then my colleague Smitha will talk more about the stakeholders involved or roles involved with procurement. And finally, we'll talk through some common misalignments and their current and corresponding alignment approaches. Empower Procurement is a program led by Prospect Silicon Valley, funded by the California Energy Commission. We help institutional organizations in California decarbonize your purchasing streams through a variety of procurement initiatives. And this particular module has been developed by Energy Solutions, where I work along with Smitha as part of our benchmarking procurement initiative. We also want to recognize the other organizations on the Power Procurement team. You can see them listed on the next slide. Yes. So why procurement? Obviously, there's an opportunity, especially here in California, and dollars involved and potential opportunity. What we buy makes a difference. There are a few ways that procurement makes a difference. It impacts the cost of products, energy use, social diversity of suppliers, health and safety, local suppliers. These are all things to consider in the procurement pipeline. And Power Procurement focuses on the energy and greenhouse gas and cost sides, but these other aspects of sustainable procurement are also given attention in our efforts. So let's start with procurement as a whole. As seen in the pie chart on the left here, and you probably know based on experience, that purchasing activities can have a large impact on your organization's greenhouse gas emissions. However, if you deal with procurement at your organization, you also know that procurement is a complicated matter. There are a lot of stakeholders involved, both within and without your organization, and a lot of diverse needs that need to be met. On top of just meeting your procurement needs, it can be difficult to determine which clean energy technologies to purchase, especially as they're emerging and changing so rapidly. Recordings and live webinars in our particular course will focus on the benchmarking aspect of procurement. As you'll see in the upcoming slides, benchmarking can help simplify operations and ensure you're making more strategic carbon conscious purchases to help you reach your goals. Next slide, you can see some of what Power Procurement has to offer. We can help with things like streamlining contracting, understanding best practices for identifying services professionals, and best practices to follow for products procurement. Our procurement initiatives are led by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Energy Solutions, and ZNE Alliance to cover 6 main areas of focus for procurement: practices, contracts, language, services, products, e-fleet management, and benchmarking, which is the focus of this particular module series. So let me take a pause now and invite audience participation. Now that I've covered the background of Empower Procurement, does anyone have any questions about the program before we dig in and talk about procurement roles?
Feel free to also use the chat function as well. If you think of something while we are mid-presentation, feel free to chat it in the chat feature. Cool. Looks like we can keep going. I'm going to start off reviewing the roles, rules, and tools framework, which we covered in our last module. Thank you to those of you who are returning viewers from our webinar series. So the roles, rules, and tools framework is a proven data collection and analysis method that guides all activities under the Empower Procurement program. Derived from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab's work to provide the Department of Energy with insights to review and improve the Federal Energy Management Program, guidelines, the roles, rules, and tools framework allows a full assessment of an organization's set practices, processes, goals, and barriers. In the next installments of this course, we are going to be examining roles, rules, and tools individually. So this particular webinar is focusing on the roles. So now that you've seen the roles, rules, and tools framework and how it can impact successful benchmarking, we want to highlight some aspects of roles, rules, and tools first. So without somebody leading the initiative, pursuing sustainable procurement can be unorganized and inefficient, which is why assigning somebody to specifically oversee sustainable procurement enables you to be successful. So this would be the roles aspect of the methodology. Without clear goals for sustainable purchasing within an organization, you won't be able to create a sustainable procurement section within a climate action plan that highlights importance. So this policy aspect of the methodology constitutes the rules portion. And finally, the tools. An inadequate system leads to unnecessary work and wasted time. Updating platform saves time and makes tracking much simpler. Here we have outlined the roles, the rules, and tools which enable for sustainable procurement to occur successfully and thoughtfully. So now we're going to talk about some roadblocks to implementing this framework. So some of the typical challenges with sustainable procurement include that sustainable procurement is time intensive. Organizations have limited capacity to research and compare product. Another challenge is buy-in from critical roles, whether that be procurement officers or leadership. Organizations have a complex structure for purchasing approval, which means that if someone in the organization is sustainability minded, the decision makers are not necessarily in close communication with the people who are doing the sustainable research. And finally, another challenge is that purchasing occurs across several departments. For example, IT is purchasing monitors, administration is purchasing power strips, and because there are so many departments involved, communication is not streamlined, and there is no way to put policy and sustainability at the forefront because there are too many players involved. So how do we address these issues by implementing roles in an organization? Here are some potential solutions. So here are 2 options for implementing the roles framework at your organization. Option number 1, dedicated procurement staff. The first option is to hire a dedicated department whose responsibility is to integrate sustainability into purchasing policies, research sustainable procurement options, and hold the organization accountable. Now, this is a great and very successful option if your organization has the resources to make this happen. However, this option can be a little more expensive and require much more commitment from the organization. Now, option 2 is to create a procurement task force. Option 2 is to form a task force or committee in lieu of or as a precursor to a dedicated procurement officer or department. Individuals in this procurement task force should be selected from each department with purchasing abilities to ensure every potential purchasing option is represented. So if IT is buying monitors and admin is buying power strips, an individual from both of these departments should be represented in the procurement task force so that they can learn, research, share practices, go back to their departments and implement things that they've learned with sustainability at the forefront of their mind. Let's take a look at a case study for option 1, the designated procurement staff. So the city of Palo Alto, for example, has implemented a specific department for procurement. So the city of Palo Alto Department of Purchasing and Contract Administration is charged with the responsibility of purchasing and contracting for all of the goods and services utilized by the city. As a result of having a dedicated procurement and sustainability staff, the city of Palo Alto was able to develop a green procurement program with the objective to align purchasing policies with climate protection, zero waste, and water quality goals. So this is a really good example of how a dedicated procurement staff and a dedicated sustainability staff can work hand in hand in order to implement what is going to later be described as rules in the rules and tools framework. So that's kind of how they fit together. If your organization has the means and is in a position to implement this, I invite you to take a look at the job description for the Chief Procurement Officer in the city of Palo Alto. You can take a minute to just look this over. I won't be going super in depth with it, but this is a great way to start. It's a good jumping off point if your organization is in a position to hire dedicated staff. So option number 2 is a procurement task force, which again is a group of individuals across multiple departments that don't typically communicate, meeting regularly to put sustainability at the forefront of procurement initiatives. So a great case study is the University of California System's Sustainability Steering Committee, which is a committee of procurement stakeholders from all 10 UC campuses working together to implement a successful system-wide sustainability policy. What is really interesting about this case study is that all 10 UC campuses operate from the same sustainability policy guidelines, but much like within an organization, there are 10 independent UC campuses trying to implement this policy, and there is no centralized procurement across so many campuses. It is very helpful to have a committee of people that meet regularly. So some individuals in the committee are sustainability focused, meaning they're sustainability analysts or officers, but many of them are not. Many of them are people with purchasing power that come together and form working groups. So people from all 10 campuses in food service would all be on the sustainability food service working group, and so on. These working groups coordinate the implementation of their respective policy areas by sharing best practices, capturing benefits from economies of scales and scopes, and reporting progress and challenges regularly. So if you are interested in forming a task force at your organization, I invite you to read some of the definitions of the committees and working groups as described in the UC Sustainable Practices Policy. This will just give you a good idea of, one, the difference between a working group and the committee, and maybe give you some ideas of how to implement this structure in your own organization. So now that we have looked at both of these options of implementing rules, I'd like to open up the conversation to the people that are viewing this webinar right now, and see if any of those ideas resonate with you, if you have any examples in your organization. I'm going to put some questions on the slide, and if you read through them, see which one of these relates to you, and speak to one of them. And I invite you to unmute yourself after I read through some of these questions. So, who are the critical roles at your organization responsible for implementing sustainable procurement? Who at your organization, quote, carries the torch for sustainable procurement? Is there a designated individual or department tasked with holding others accountable regarding sustainable procurement? How do you think your organization can make space for prioritizing sustainability?
Yeah, we invite people to chime in verbally by chat or using the Q&A feature. Feel free to introduce yourselves. I guess that can be a precursor to one, who you are and why you decided to attend this webinar relating to procurement today. If you have any questions for us, feel free to ask. We want this and future modules to be interactive in nature. So open to your feedback about this offering or perhaps challenges unrelated to roles. Feel free to use this avenue to discuss. And we'd certainly appreciate your feedback. We have 2 more modules in our series here, and we're developing content for them. If in the future we'd prefer more content from us, we can certainly consider more or different webinar styles. Happy to answer questions. Happy to field your feedback at this time.
So in summary, there are 2 main pathways an organization can take to improve their roles framework. Number 1 is a dedicated procurement staff, which would mean the organization would hire a dedicated department whose responsibility is to integrate sustainability into purchasing policies, research sustainable procurement options, and hold the organization accountable. Number 2, the Sustainable Procurement Task Force, which would be responsible for sustainable planning and procurement. This would be easier to initiate in the near term, and if a dedicated procurement team is not feasible for your organization, it could also be a precursor to a formal procurement department team. We invite you all to come back and join us on May 5th for our next Empower Procurement webinar in this series, focusing on rules challenges relating to institutional procurement. Feel free to also check out the website, empowerprocurement.com, and contact us if you want to enroll in one of our other procurement initiatives.
So thank you for attending. We will be posting recording of the presented content on the empowerprocurement.com website. We'll also stick around for a few minutes here if anyone has thought of questions or comments, discussion items for us. If not, feel free to be about your day. But Samantha and I will stick around for 5 minutes here. Thank you so much for attending the next installment in our Empower Procurement benchmarking module. Have a great day.